Hey y'all, welcome or welcome back. We're doing your new moon horoscope for the new moon in Pisces, which is happening on this Thursday, February 27th, 2025 at 7:45 p.m. Eastern. That is 4:45 p.m. Pacific time at 9 degrees and 41 minutes of lovely Pisces. So this is actually one of the busiest weeks of the astrological year. We have the new moon in Pisces, and then we have one of the biggest transits of the astrological year, which is going to be Venus stationing retrograde in the sign of Aries. That is going to be a topic for another video, although we will touch on it slightly. This is also a pre-eclipse kind of warm-up new moon because we are going into eclipse season. So yes, we will have eclipse season alongside Venus retrograde, alongside a Mercury retrograde as well. So there is a lot of astrological energy going on right now. Now, as for this new moon particularly, I actually really like this new moon. I am a little bit biased and I generally prefer new moons over full moons, but this new moon is actually a really beautiful energy. We do have a lot of energy going on that's kind of a little bit conflicting at the time of this new moon, but overall, it's a new moon in Pisces. We have the North Node now in Pisces, South Node is of course in Virgo. We have Venus, which is stationing retrograde in Aries, will also retrograde back into the sign of Pisces. So this is kind of giving us kind of like a prelude to Venus, which will retrograde in Pisces later on in its retrograde, but there really isn't any terrible, quote unquote, terrible aspects that are happening at the time of this new moon. There is an exact aspect, a square to Jupiter, which is of course in the sign of Gemini, is direct in the sign of Gemini now, but Jupiter is the great benefic, so I don't think it's an aspect that we need to worry or be too overly concerned about. So we're going to dive into that in just a moment. Now, new moons, of course, if you're not familiar, are an exact conjunction with the sun and the moon. So both the sun and the moon are at 9 degrees and 41 minutes of Pisces, and new moons are really representations of new beginnings or fresh starts or planting seeds of something that we can later harvest at the full moon. So when the full moon is in Pisces during Virgo season. This is a new moon that is really about planting seeds or opportunities for our spiritual growth, advancement, our psychic and intuitive abilities, as well as our creativity and our connection with our imagination. There is a lot of telepathic energy in regards to this new moon. So things like telepathy or any of the clair words, clairsentience, clairvoyance, any of those types of things can be heightened around this time. But to me, this new moon is really about communion and conversation with God, the divine, angels, whatever it is you believe in. It doesn't really matter, but it's about communion and conversation with God and or your higher power. There is a potential for some discomfort or some triggering energies during this new moon. We have Mars, which is in square to Chiron. We also have the North Node, which is in Pisces now and conjunct to Neptune. So those are both a little bit of a discomforting energy, but I don't think it's anything that we need to be worried about too much. This is really about disciplining our mind. Mercury is a heavy hitter in this new moon. There is a lot of energy about confronting our shadows, healing and confronting our triggers, taking action to be able to heal ourselves. Pisces is very healing energy. It's a spiritual and an emotional healing, and it's also an energy of unconditional love. So of course, this is happening at 9 degrees and 41 minutes. So this is happening in the first decan of Pisces, and this decan of Pisces is ruled by Jupiter and or Neptune, and it's also ruled by the Eight of Cups tarot card. Now, the Eight of Cups tarot card is an interesting tarot card because I always mention when I'm doing my personal readings or my collective readings that the Eight of Cups is the only card in the whole entire tarot that actually has an eclipse on it. So I think this is an even better representation of this being like a pre-eclipse warm-up because we're going into eclipse season after this new moon, and it's kind of giving us that eclipse type energy. But the Eight of Cups tarot card is really about walking away from something that is no longer emotionally fulfilling you in order to find emotional fulfillment. And sometimes that emotional fulfillment will come from in yourself or with yourself as opposed to in a situation that is not emotionally fulfilling you. It can be about disappointment, withdrawal, walking away, escapism, searching for truth, leaving. It can be abandonment or just emotional abandonment. You're seeking better, you're letting go. It can be about travel or moving. Also self-discovery and the courage to leave a bad or emotionally challenging or difficult situation. It's leaving the past and going towards the new. So I think that is generally a pretty good theme for this new moon in Pisces. Pisces is a very past-oriented energy because it's mutable water. So it does have to do with emotional baggage from the past and our shadows that have to do with the past. And it's about leaving those things behind and moving towards the future. And we're going to do that by being in connection with God and the divine and our spiritual practices. Now, of course, Pisces is the 12th and final sign of the zodiac. It is mutable water, ruled by Jupiter in traditional astrology, and in modern astrology, ruled by Neptune. And it is represented by the two fish. Pisces can be described by being caring, compassionate, loving, spiritual, intuitive, psychic, emotional, sensitive, romantic, adaptable, artistic, creative, dreamy, wise, or just overall like ethereal and kind of out of this world. Some negative traits of Pisces could be somewhat lazy, manipulative, overly emotional. They do have a tendency to be kind of escapist or to avoid their problems, somewhat secretive or disruptive, not disciplined, insecure, or somewhat just careless and kind of out of this world, not really in 3D reality, right? They're not really seeing the reality of the situation. Now, diving into more of the specifics of this new moon in Pisces, we do have, as I mentioned, one of the only exact aspects that I really think is worth touching on is going to be the square to Jupiter in Gemini. Jupiter is at 12 degrees of Gemini, now direct, it's 12 degrees and 11 minutes, and it is a square. Now, of course, a square is a somewhat difficult aspect depending on the planets involved, but when we have a square or any aspect to Jupiter, it's going to have a hint of benefic and good luck and good fortune energy, right? So there is this general feeling of, you know, well-being, enthusiasm, and optimism towards the future. Also a very expansive energy. It can represent like emotional growth and healing and kind of an integration of both the mind and our connection to our intuitive side, our spiritual side, because of course Jupiter is in the sign of Gemini, which has been teaching us about looking at things from a wider perspective instead of the narrow lens of Gemini or Mercurial energy. There is a possible tendency for a square to Jupiter, especially in the sign of Gemini, for tensions or challenges to be related to our beliefs and or our values. It's like our faith can almost be being tested at this point. We could be questioning a lot of things. We could feel a bit restless, and we could also be a bit emotionally dissatisfied or find some sort of dissatisfaction in our emotional or spiritual health and wealth. So this is really about having a faith in a higher power, and even though our faith is being tested or our beliefs are being tested, it's about standing firm in what we truly believe in and having faith that our beliefs are set in stone for a reason. That's what a connection with God or spiritual practice is there for. It's there for you to be able to lean on. So we're really asked to use this as a very optimistic energy and enthusiastic energy. You know, don't be overly confident or overly cocky. Don't overestimate your abilities. You know, things like risky behavior or overindulgent could be prominent with this new moon, especially with it being in the sign of Pisces and the square to Jupiter. Things like overindulgence could be possible. So just be careful that we're not like sending ourselves in a spiral of the mind that leads to some sort of escapism. So that could be one thing that we need to be watching out for at this time. Stay practical and grounded, and also confident, but not overconfident or cocky. Now, technically, I would say that this new moon is in a trine with Mars. Although it's a very wide orb, it's going to be about 8 degrees. So I don't really think it's worth diving too much further into, but just note that the new moon in Pisces is going to be in trine to Mars, which is now direct in the sign of Cancer. Remember, we just went through the Mars retrograde period. The next thing I want to talk about, which I have touched on in many other videos, so I'm not going to dive too deep into it, is that Neptune is still conjunct the North Node. So Neptune is at 28, the North Node is at 27. We also have Mercury there at 24 degrees, all in the sign of Pisces. So we know that the North Node is in Pisces now, conjunct to Neptune. This really amplifies the North Node Piscean Neptunian energy. So things can be a bit confusing for our logical mind. Now there's a lot of Mercurial energy, which we're going to dive into in just a moment. Mercury is here in this conjunction as well. But this is really about our journey of self-discovery, our journey of spiritual growth and development, evolution, transformation. It's about our intuition, our connection with God, spirituality, all these things that we've been relating back to Pisces energy, and it's lessons related to connecting with God and the divine and our faith, right? It's really about fostering deep compassion and empathy. It's unconditional love, and also bringing our visions into reality, not being lost in the sauce and not being able to bring things into tangible reality. It's pondering the deeper questions of life and the meaning of life as a whole, finding new ways to heal and grow and expand, to end one cycle and to begin another, moving forward. It's all about creativity, our imagination, our artistry, music, art, spirituality, and it's really a catalyst of our spiritual development. Just be careful with the shadow side of Pisces, which can be isolation, escapism, confusion, or not seeing things clearly, wearing rose-colored glasses, idealism, right? And anything to do with the shadow self. Now with Mercury here in this conjunction, I would like to add that this does bring an element of more logical minded or practicality energy to this Neptunian Piscean ethereal, otherworldly energy that we're all experiencing collectively right now. With Mercury in this conjunction to the North Node and Neptune, it's kind of bringing an understanding of the spiritual significance of the lessons that we're learning as a collective and individually into the 5 senses, into the brain, and to be able to logically understand what's actually happening spiritually. It enlightens our intuition, and to me, this is really firing off telepathic energy. So I don't know why telepathy is coming to me so strongly for this new moon, but just take it if it resonates with you. I just think that this is a very strong energy when we have a combination of Mercury and Piscean or Neptunian energy. In a combination like that, it just screams telepathy or telepathic energy to me. Also, any of the clairwords, clairaudience, clairvoyance, clairsentience, etc. This really boosts our ability to create, like actually create something in physical, tangible reality and bring it down to earth through the mind. So we're using the mind as a channel to bring down that spiritual energy of Pisces and Neptune. Make sure that we're maintaining clarity of mind, which can be a bit difficult with the conjunction to Neptune because it really kind of blurs things. So we can feel a bit confused or foggy mentally, but we really need to use that to our advantage and using that for creative or artistic pursuits or connecting with God and the divine and using it for some sort of spiritual practice. It can make it difficult to think clearly or make decisions, so just be wary of that. But our psychic and intuitive insight is going to be on point. It's best to keep communication straightforward and as clear and concise as possible so that you avoid any miscommunications or distortions of, what you're trying to portray to other people. Technically, in a wide orb conjunction with the North Node, Neptune, and Mercury is also Saturn. Saturn is at 20, Mercury is at 24, the North Node's at 27, and Neptune is at 28. So we're going to focus on Saturn conjunct to Mercury. So again, as I mentioned, Mercury is a heavy hitter in this new moon in Pisces, which is kind of a contradictory energy because Mercury doesn't necessarily do super well in the sign of Pisces. They're kind of contradictory energies. But I think if we can blend the two energies together, it can be really helpful for us. Now, when we're focusing on Mercury conjunct to Saturn, this is a little bit reserved and cautious in our speech and the way that we're communicating and our thinking style, and it can really kind of lead to negative thinking or thinking of the past in a negative way or just thinking of the past in general as opposed to thinking towards the future. So we need to be careful with like depression or apathy or thinking negatively about your situation or the past or thinking negatively about anything in general. There can be a tendency with this for this new moon. We can use this as fuel for discipline for the mind, keeping our mind as clear and concise as possible, being practical, logical, analytical, and using this for our intellectual pursuits. We might be a bit more introverted or reserved at this time, and that is perfectly fine. It does improve our concentration though, so it's great. It's a great energy for like doing paperwork or any business dealings or any type of critical thinking. So definitely utilize that for anything that needs to get done as far as like paperwork, work, business, financial matters, anything like that. We can really use this as a very disciplined energy of the mind to get shit done. Just be sure that we're keeping a positive mindset as much as possible because there can be a tendency for negative thinking and or depression. Saturn is a very depressive and restrictive energy. Of course, in the sign of Pisces, that's going to add even more of a shadow quality to it, and it's conjunct to the mind, Mercury, and or communication. So just be careful how we're communicating with other people. We might not feel like communicating as much with other people at this time, but we can really use this for like laser focus and honing down on the things that we need to get done, being disciplined about our future and where we want to go and getting done the things that need to get done. Lastly, I just want to mention, of course I mentioned this before, but Mars is going to be square to Chiron at this time. This transit has been going on for a little bit of time now because of course Mars did just station direct in the sign of Cancer after a very long retrograde. Always keep in mind Mars in Cancer is in its fall position, so it's in not a very great position for it to be in. But this is challenging yet a very transformative energy of our emotions and our emotional triggers, also triggers from childhood, triggers of the ego, and it triggers our actions or triggers us into action. That's the key there. So it can trigger our actions or trigger us into action to take some sort of initiative to heal, because Chiron is an energy of our deepest wounds but also our greatest gifts, and Mars is an energy of us being able to take action on something. So of course I've been talking about throughout this Mars retrograde. I would definitely go check that video out if you haven't already, because it's still a relevant energy because Mars is still in shadow. But Mars retrograde in Cancer has really been triggering us emotionally and to react emotionally, and that's the triggers and the wounds and the emotions that we're trying to heal now that Mars is direct. It's squaring Chiron and it's kind of giving us that final push to be able to take the action that we need in order to heal those wounds and triggers in the first place. So it's kind of resurfacing those wounds and triggers in order for us to be able to heal them. It can really generate profound healing and growth emotionally, spiritually, and all of the above. The pain points or the triggers that you're experiencing are the exact areas that you need to be taking action on. So things like anger, aggression, hostility, agitation, sexuality. Those could all be areas that you feel triggered in some way, but have them lead you to a place of healing or to take action in order to get to a place of healing. Now, that is not like all of the aspects. Those are the major ones. Those are the closest orbs. We also have Mercury, which is sextile to Uranus. This is a 1-degree orb, so this is a pretty prominent energy as well. Mercury at 24 of Pisces, of course, and Uranus at 23 of Taurus. This can really light up our intuition and our psychic abilities even more so. This is a new moon in Pisces, so our psychic and intuitive abilities are already on point, and we're asked to like gain some sort of insight and awareness into the higher perspective of things. Uranus is like lightning fast. It's a different type of intuition than we might find with Neptune, but Uranus is the higher octave of Mercury, so it's coming through the mind, or it's coming through like an Aquarian type of way. It's very hard to describe because Uranus is such like a rebel and kind of a different planet. It's very out there, right? It's different. So you're not really sure how Uranus is going to manifest for each individual person because it's going to show up differently for everyone, but it's usually going to come through like a higher intelligence form of intuition, and this is coming through the mind, and it's coming down into reality to you so that you can be able to use it more logically and practically in the 3D, if that makes sense. Venus is sextile to Jupiter, which is a beautiful energy. Venus is slowing down to retrograde in just a few days on March 1st. That's going to be a topic for another video, so stay tuned for that. But Venus and Jupiter in a sextile, they're both the benefics, the lesser benefic Venus, the greater benefic Jupiter in a sextile is a very, Venusian, beautiful, expansive, optimistic energy. I really love this new moon, guys. We also have Mars, which is trine to Saturn. I've talked about this aspect a lot, which is one of my favorite aspects to get shit done and to do things, be disciplined, take action, get the things done you need to get done in order for your future to be what it needs to be or what you want it to be ultimately. So there is a lot of energy going on, guys. This new moon in Pisces, I really do love. We're going into eclipse season, Venus retrograde. We're going into the spring equinox with Aries season coming up. So there is a lot of astrological energy going on. Buckle up, because the next couple years, really, the next 5 years are going to be crazy astrologically. These are changing times. Everything is changing. It's new. It's very different energy that we're going into, so it can feel a bit chaotic, and we're being triggered to heal ourselves and to move to the next, evolution of our consciousness, both collectively and individually. So take that how it resonates, take that how you will. Enjoy this new moon in Pisces, guys. I think it's a beautiful one, and it's kind of a prelude to eclipse season and Venus retrograde as a whole. So that is all I have for you guys. Personal readings can be found in the description box and the pinned comment. I also do have a free mini ebook in the link as well. It's called a tarot history lesson if you guys are interested in the history of tarot. And then I also do have my ritual intention oils, which I will be coming out with on Etsy in the near future. But if you guys want them before they are up on Etsy, they are currently priced at $7.99. You can shoot me an email or a DM or leave a comment down below saying you're interested in ritual oils, and I can tell you how to contact me. But they are priced at $7.99 currently. They will go up in price when they're up on Etsy. I will list in the description box below the different options available, but just as an example, I do have Psychic Visions for psychic and intuitive abilities, great for the new moon in Pisces. Shield Me, I wear this every day to protect your energy. And then Empress Allure, which is a very Venusian, patchouli vanilla scent. They all do have a different scent profile as well. So, but yeah, guys, happy new moon in Pisces. I love you all so very much. And please do enjoy this new moon in Pisces. Connect to God, the divine, your spiritual practices. Utilize your creativity, your imagination, doing art or just doing something that gets you into the flow. It's a very flowy energy. Pisces is a very flow-oriented energy. So that is all I have for you, my loves. Much love and stay groovy.